Bad news if you're a college student that depends on federal help to pay for school. Now, USA Today is reporting that the Trump budget has massive, inside of it has massive cuts to student aid in the form of Pell Grants. Now, in the budget proposal released last week, it does keep the Pell Grant program, doesn't actually eliminate it like it does eliminate all the programs, but it does have a massive cut of $3.9 billion, which is a hugely significant cut to that program. Now, the program right now sends up to $5,000, $5,920 to students and families that earn less than $40,000 per year, and it prioritized for families making close to under $20,000 or less. So this is for people who are in poverty. This is for people who can't afford school on their own. They can't have their parents pay for college. You know, they don't have these huge college trust funds or anything like that. No. These are poor people. These people need help. And it's unfair to lump lots and lots of debt onto these people who don't have very much for just trying to get an education. An education that is, of course, needed for these people to get good jobs, to rise out of poverty. Now, the reason, of course, that it's on the chopping block, that Republicans say, is that it's the largest expense in the U.S. Department of Education, with an estimated of $28.2 billion on Pell Grants in the 2015 and 2016 academic year alone. So, look, you're cutting $3.9 billion. So that's going to affect a significant number of people. Maybe not overall, but there is quite a few people that are going to lose out on this. Now, why does it cost so much? Well, it turns out the costs are high because it's being used heavily. 88% of the student body in New Mexico State University, for example, and 80% of the population of Texas A&M received Pell Grants in the 2014 and 2015 year. So you cut these Pell Grants, you're going to have a lot less people who are going to be able to afford school, or they're going to get piled under a mountain of debt. And why do people go? Well, it's because they need some of these degrees to get those good jobs. And even then, of course, the job isn't really a guarantee. Now, that's not the only thing that's going to be cut. Actually, the Trump budget actually also totally eliminates the Federal Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant. Now, that grant supplies $100,000 to $4,000 a year for students with financial need, according to the U.S. Department of Education. Now, this federal education grant is actually different from the others because it is campus-based and sent directly to the financial aid office, not the student. Now, the Trump administration argues that these grants need to be cut because, quote, they are a less well-targeted way to deliver need-based aid than the Pell Grant program. But see, that doesn't make sense because they just cut the Pell Grant program too. If they wanted to cut this program and shift the money into Pell Grants, well, that would make sense, according to their statement. But no, they're cutting both. They're eliminating one grant and they're cutting the other grant. Fantastic. That's what they're doing here. Now, they note that cutting this program will save $732 million. Now, that same budget, let's do some comparison here. That same budget looks to be looks to include massive tax cuts for corporations. Not only that, but it looks to increase the budget for the Pentagon. So all the money for, we've got all the money in the world for war and for wealthy multinational corporations. However, we have $3.9 billion less if you just count the cuts to the Pell Grant alone for education. I mean, who needs education anyway? Trump loves the poorly educated. Look, the reason that this is a problem is that, look, less grants equals students have to take on more debt. That's not going to lower prices. Student loan debt right now is over $1 trillion. People graduate with tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of student loan debt. And before you come in, is like, it's just the liberal arts people. No, actually, these people are engineers, teachers, people with business degrees, medical professionals, law students. All these people rack up hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loan debt. And now these people are going to have a larger albatross around their necks that prevent them from buying things like a home, a new car, getting married, starting families, and just overall participating in the economy. And why? Well, that money right now, it goes back into the government. Why? I mean, why shouldn't this education that seems more and more required to have be paid for through taxes? You know, universal tuition for all. Debt-free tuition. I mean, look, Bernie Sanders ran on tuition-free education, right? You know how much it would cost? An estimated $75 billion a year. You know what happened? People screamed and howled that it was too much. Oh, it's too much money. $75 billion. We don't have that money for education. Well, did you know that a wall between us and Mexico that we don't need, that's easily bypassed through tunnels and airplanes, starts at $25 billion and is, of course, expected to actually be a lot more. Trump also wants to give the Pentagon an extra $54 billion on top of their $600 billion annual budget. And yet, oh man, we just can't afford education. We can't afford that $3.9 billion for Pell Grants to make sure that people who are poor can go to school. Look, compared to what we spend on stuff we don't need, the $3.9 billion in Pell Grants and the $793 million in the other amount, and the other grant that just got axed, well, that amounts to peanuts. But see, this is what their agenda is. They cut taxes for the rich, and they got to pay for it somehow, so they cut things like education. That's their priorities. That's what they care about. That's what they do. It's not about the fact that we can't afford to do these things. It's the fact that our priorities are so absolutely messed up. It's the fact that we don't have the political will to take care of our students to make sure that everybody is highly trained for the jobs of the future. Again, when you have so much student loan debt, you can't go and start a business. You can't go create jobs. You might end up being stuck in crappy jobs and not doing the unpaid internships, for example, in order to get other positions that you went to school for. Well, I can't afford to do an unpaid internship because I have these student loans. I have these massive student loans to pay. I can't afford to do that. I pay $470 a month for my student loans. That's insane. I don't even have that big of a loan. But that's what we're stuck with. Now you want to have people have to borrow more money to go to school and not get as much in grants, because this is essentially a cut. No, you're going to load people up with even more debt. And if you don't see how detrimental that is to the economy, then you're not paying attention. You don't understand. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.